Okay, ladies and gents, if you make a start, please. Good evening. I'm Councillor Paul Wilby, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting, the meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service Team will assess the situation and further instruction on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but for anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Okay. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by the way of the microphones and remind them to turn their microphone off when they are finished speaking, please. Okay. Item 1, apologies for absence. We have Councillor Summerskill. Apologies. Everyone else is here, I believe. Moving on to item 2 then. Substitute members.
Councillor Green and substituting for Councillor Summerskill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Item 3, visiting members. I see we've got a couple of visiting members. If you want to just approach and say what items you wish to speak on.
It's Councillor Springett on item 23. Thank you.
Councillor Round, wishing to speak on items 14, page 21 and 17, page 46.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Round. Moving on, item 4, items withdrawn from the agenda. There are no items recommended to be withdrawn from the agenda this evening. Item 5, the adjourned meeting date, be the 28th of April if required. I'm not hoping we don't have to do it for this one. So, urgent items, I intend to take all written and verbal updates as urgent items as they contain further information relating to the matters to be considered at the meeting tonight. Is that agreed? Thank you, councillors. Item 7, disclosures of members and officers. Are there any disclosures?
Thank you, Chair. Item 15, I sit on what we now call the enforcement group for the Heather House development. I don't feel it presents a conflict of interest, so I still intend to speak and vote on it.
Thanks for that, Councillor. And that's the same for myself. And also items 21 and 22, I have to disclose that I work on the Woodcut Farm site, but this will not impact the business I work for. And I do intend to speak and vote on the matter on items 21 and 22. Councillor Jeffries.
Items 15 and 16 are both Maidstone Borough Council presented items. One of the 16 certainly I have discussed and won't be taking part and will leave the room. Item 15 I haven't discussed with anybody, but as leader of the council, everything sits within my portfolio, so I will just go.
And Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Also, items 15 and 16 as Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources both sit within my portfolio. I haven't spoken with anybody about item 15. I do have knowledge clearly of number 16, so I'll also leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
In view of the remarks that have been made, I'm not Cabinet Member for either item 15 or 16, and I've not been materially involved in the conversation. So therefore, I think with your agreement that I should stay, I'm open-minded about the issue and do not have a predetermined position.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, similarly, I've had no involvement with either 15 or 16, so therefore feel that my discretion is not fettered and I am not predetermined.
Thank you, Councillor Hull. Any others? No. Okay, moving on then. Disclosures of lobbying. Again, I'll start on the left and work the way around.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on items 18 and items 20.
I haven't been lobbied on anything, I'm pleased to say. Thank you. Similarly for me, nothing.
17, 18, 20, 21 and 22 on the agenda, Chair.
17, 18, 20, 21, 22 on the agenda.
17, 18, 20 and 23.
Thank you, Chairman. Items 17, 18, 20, 21, 22 and 23.
Thank you, Chairman. Items 17, 21 and 22.
For myself, I have been lobbied on items 18, 20, 21 and 22. I'm ward member for item 23. So as you would expect, I have been lobbied on this matter, but I am presently open-minded on the decision.
I think I've been lobbied on 20, 21 and 22.
I've been lobbied on 16, 17, 18, 20, 21 and 22. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I move that all items on the agenda be taken as public as proposed. Is this agreed? Thank you. Item 10, minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of March 2025. I move that the minutes of this meeting be approved as correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Presentation of petitions. We don't have any tonight, correct? Yep. Okay. Item 12, I call upon Rob Jarman, Head of Development Management, to provide an update on the deferred items.
Thanks, Chairman, and good evening. The only item I can report back on is the last item, Eclipse Business Park. That application will be brought back to the May Planning Committee. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jarman. And that then, we move on to item 23. I call upon Tony Ryan to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the proposed engineering operations involving the excavation of soils and materials on the site and the regrading and restoration of the land. This is the aerial photo. Show this site marked. A water lane runs down towards the centre of this image. The line across the image is the M20. This is a more detailed bird's eye view with water lane at the bottom of the image. There was a wooded area at the top of this image, which is ancient woodland. This 6-acre site was used to deposit material which came from the M20 and Ewell Tunnel rail links. This material included clay, soil, and oversized stones. As can be seen by this image, the land on the site undulates. It has uneven and irregular ground shapes and forms with voids and mounds. The reason for this application is that this land is less productive than the neighbouring agricultural land and is prone to waterlogging. The second bird's eye is from the opposite side of the site with water lane at the top of the image and the M20 visible in the background. The site has been subject to enforcement investigation where it's noted by NBC, the site has been unlawfully used as a waste transfer site. To bring the site back into agricultural use with an area of grassland for agricultural grazing, the regrading of the site is proposed. The works involve regrading of 10,000 cubic metres of existing material on the site. The existing soil on site will be reused on site. Any hardcore produced from the screening operations would be used for an access road, and a drainage ditch will be provided on the north of the site. The works also require 3,000 cubic metres of soil to be imported, and this operation would take place over a 60-day period with 5 incoming vehicle movements per day. In the image here, the applicant has provided 3 section drawings to show the existing profile of the land on the application site and the proposed ground levels. The image on the bottom right of this image shows the locations where the profiles have been taken. Profile AA is across the bottom of the site. BB down the length of the site from Water Lane to the wooded area, and CC across the frontage of the site. A planning condition is suggested to seek further information with regards to existing and spot levels to ensure that the levels match what is being proposed on these images. With the current profile of the application site resulting from the link to the channel tunnel, it is concluded that the current application meets the National Landscape Test, which is to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area. Landscape planning conditions are also recommended to seek further details of landscape enhancement and long-term management. As confirmed by the urgent update, the application does not involve any work within the 15-metre ancient woodland buffer zone, which covers a section of the southeast part of the site. With the benefit of ecological and protected species surveys, the advice from KCC Ecology and recommended planning conditions, the proposal is found to be acceptable in relation to ecology and biodiversity. With the benefit of submitted information, planning conditions and the Section 106 agreement, the proposal is acceptable in relation to highway, transport and amenity matters. There have been 2 urgent updates, one published earlier on this week and another one today, setting out changes to the planning conditions, which seek to ensure that the actual material imported onto the site is clean. It highlights the hours that the work will take place, and also in terms of the Section 106 agreement, as well as recording the HGV movements to the site. There is a requirement for the applicant to record the weight of material actually brought onto the site. With those changes, the officer recommendation is to approve, subject to a Section 106 and planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I believe we have the applicant joining us virtually, Miss Beacon.
Yes, hello.
Okay, if you want to make a start, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. It's understood that the application before you has been called into Planning Committee by the Parish Council. The application site has a fairly upsetting and checkered past in planning terms, having historically been used for unlawful waste deposits. This application seeks to bring the land back into agricultural use and thus prevent any further harm or degradation. The regrading operations would enable the site to be used back as agriculture, a use which is consistent with the landscape character, and to this we note the support of the Kent Downs National Landscape Unit. The comments made by the Parish Council seem to relate to an in-principle objection to the scheme, where they feel the site should simply be left alone as they have concerns over the contaminated land. To this, we draw the committee's attention to the comments from the Environment Agency, who state they have no objections to the scheme, subject to the relevant regulatory guidelines being adhered to, such as the definition of waste code of practice. Similarly, Maidstone's environmental health raised no objection in this regard, subject to the relevant conditions being imposed, which we know have been suggested in the officer report on the scheme. This application has been with the local authority for over a year now. During this time, the applicant has worked tirelessly and without hesitation to address all comments made by statutory consultees and render the scheme acceptable in all material planning concerns, as is now reflected in the officer report. Understandably, the applicant needs to be able to put the land to some sort of use, or they will be forced to sell it on. In this scenario, the local authority would have no say in who it would be sold to, and the resultant land use or ambitions of the new owners could be something wholly incompatible with the neighbouring villages or the landscape character of the area. The scheme in front of this committee affords the authority the opportunity to bring an end to the unfortunate history of the site and reinstate the most appropriate land use, where controls are afforded to the local authority by the use of appropriate planning conditions. Overall, the scheme represents sustainable development in line with local and national planning policy, and one which will bring about great benefit to the character of the landscape and the surrounding locality. We would therefore respectfully request that the development be granted by members in line with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Hello? Have we lost you, Alice?
Hello, no, I'm here, sorry, yeah.
Councillor
Hello?
Springett. No, it's fine, Alice. We actually, I didn't hear you say thank you. That you
Oh,
finished
okay.
up.
Yeah,
Okay.
all done, thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Councillor Van Springett.
Good evening. You ready for me to speak? Yeah, good evening, members. Much probably to your surprise, I'm actually here to support this application. I'm normally here to object to things, but I'm here to support it. As has just been said, this site has had a very, very checkered history, which includes an original approved lawful use of the site for spoil from the M20 and the CTRL, and then subsequent illegal importation and sorting of waste materials. Whilst I'd love to see the whole site cleared rather than just resorted and covered over with fresh soil, I think most of the earlier materials appear to be a mixture of rubble, bricks and similar inert demolition materials, and most of this is unlikely to cause any significant ecological harm to wildlife or groundwater. So I am happy with this application. I'd much rather we tried to get this land repaired than left it as it is. I'm very pleased to see there's a requirement for the mounting of old tyres to finally be removed. I think it's been sitting there for about 2 years. The only further comment I've got to make is in order to ensure that the application just relates to restoring the land for agriculture, I'd like to see if we can just add a little bit of wording to ensure that it's only soil that is imported to the site, and that no importation of materials for sorting and re-exploitation are permitted. A part of that, I think, is covered in the new condition 6A, but I would welcome some additional wording if possible, that no materials will be exported from the site unless that's the tyres or any other future contamination found in accordance with condition 4. So basically I'm saying, can we somehow just tweak the wording so only soil is brought in and that no materials can be taken off site after they're sorted? Other than that, actually, I really welcome this application and I support it this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spring. Just going to bring Mr. Jarman in quickly.
Yeah, sorry, just from a sort of technical, very pragmatic point of view. Yeah, I'm conscious that if this gets approved, and I don't want to talk about the merits or anything like that, we can't rely on 5-meter intervals on the vertical access. It's just that's touching the ceiling. It's too great a tolerance. We need, I'd say, 0.25-meter intervals so that it can actually be monitored.
Thanks.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have written notes in front of me, and to be clear with the meeting, I'm not presenting a determined point of view. I'm simply respecting your time in drawing comments and questions to your attention. I note that the written proposal is for the restoration of land. It is no longer specified as for agriculture, and I note with interest the statement made on behalf of the applicant a few moments ago. The officer recommendation is for recommendation subject to conditions for the process and accountability for the outcomes secured through the legal means of a Section 106 agreement. Councillor Spriggett has already referred to the long history at this site. There is a legacy of a significant quantity of shredded and degraded tyre waste on the site. Perhaps for the benefit of members, we could go back to the slide that showed the photographic view from the southwest. I think was a useful picture. If I could simply observe, this picture is a considerable historical artifact. The site has not looked like this for a very long time. To our continuing horror, large quantities of tyre waste remains under tarpaulins on the site in the centre, where there is a large plain area. As per, yes, thank you. Those are helpful pictures showing what the situation currently is. I understand the rediscovery of the buried material was made under the leadership of the Environment Agency a significant time in the past. I have not seen any administration connected with this period, and am concerned that the inspection may not be complete, actioned, or indeed currently still valid by the Environment Agency or an equivalent organisation. There are currently, as you've seen in the previous photograph, considerable quantities in hundreds of tonnes of waste material having been dumped, some during my tenure as councillor, and these remain on site, curiously behind locked gates and concrete barriers. Residents report to me and other councillors late night movements in Water Lane, Thurnham Lane, and note the private thoroughfare between Thurnham Lane and Water Lane, by which it is suggested materials could be transferred. Some of these materials seen now on site from the road are obviously construction materials. Some are sorted, some are not. There is also a considerable quantity of the same sorts of trammer waste found dumped in numerous lay-bys and other sites around the borough in 30-tonne heaps, in this case securely contained by locked gates and concrete blocks. The report notes a further tendency to waterlogging. The text mentions a pond and a drainage ditch and a service road to be manufactured from the sorted hardcore, but there is no map or engineering details of these proposals in these plans. The concerns of Thurnham Parish Council about water contamination from leachate into the aquifer at this part of Bearsted and Thurnham have not been assessed as far as I can see, nor the risk that current leachate is contaminating the water table and Lilt stream on the opposite side of Water Lane, or that the runoff from the site to Water Lane and the Lilt might occur as a result of the regrading works during or after the process has been completed. With reference to paragraphs 408 and 508, assessment and action planning in the interest of ecological soundness and environmental health are required. Are the Environment Agency and Environmental Health properly involved at this time? If the proposal is to be permitted through a Section 106 agreement rather than through BNG legislation, how would the process work at 6.46 if the works are not begun and completed in a timely manner? It is noted at 602 and 603 that this development is outside the usual consideration of the local planning criteria. Of course, remediation must be made valid. How is this to be achieved through levy and specification of 106 monies? This is fundamentally unclear to me, and I would like some guidance about it. How the enforcement of HGV movements, as stated, the avoidance of undue wear and tear in routing requirements solely in Water Lane and Ranwell to junction 8 of the M20 must be reasonably expected to be associated with 300 loaded and 300 unloaded movements over a 60-day working period. We know what damage is being done in Thurnham Lane parallel to Water Lane just up the way. Also, how is the monitoring of the quality of imported materials to match that specified? Yet to be firmed up, as Councillor Spring has already remarked. Is the concrete and steel lorry wheel washing station in the front of the site simply to be buried? It is not mentioned in the papers in any way, shape or form. The assessment, protection and monitoring of current and ongoing biodiversity does seem to have been well considered and described. Mention of the introduction of new planting in previous applications is now not seen. So there is no proposal to improve the street view, hedging and such like in this area, or enhance the buffering to the south and east. There is in fact no explicit suggestion as to what the land will in fact be restored for, notwithstanding the remarks made on behalf of the applicant a few moments ago. The likelihood of ploughing is excluded as the proposed soil coverage is stated to be insufficient. The amended condition 4 in the update 4A part D refers to a suitability for, and I quote, normal use. Is normal use an enforceable criterion? It is disappointing that the restoration proposal does not include the removal of the decayed architectural agricultural structure. Can this be negotiated in a mutually agreeable manner? The street scene is not going to improve with the retention of that structure. Various monitoring and assessment activities are noted. In condition 4, it says that works must cease if, and I quote, potential contamination is encountered. I repeat, if the Environment Agency investigations must be established to be up to date, following the removal of all currently identified contaminants that cannot be allowed to be buried on the site. Is it simply on the basis of trust that condition 4 is thought to be effective? How is site security to be maintained during the period of works up to the point at which conditions assessment is finally signed off? The current gateway is clearly not fit for purpose, contrary to appearances. A secure arrangement will be required to facilitate 300 round trips for HGVs, as well as other heavy machinery required, while keeping the site safe from opportunistic or other dumping. I propose, Mr. Chairman, notwithstanding debate, that if this application is to be approved, then delegated powers be agreed to ensure that officers can specify the best practice means to specify, monitor and enforce conditions to cover the various items that I've mentioned that are not already in the papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. There's a lot there for the officers to digest, so what I'll leave councillors.
I have emailed those already to the officer that
I'll
already
take
has them.
Councillor Harwood and I'll let the officers come back. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a remarkably complex site with complexities running through it in every way. I remember it very well from when I used to chair the Channel Tunnel Rail Link Planning Applications Group, and inert materials were to be put on here, and then the site was to be made, and it was to be left like a big hibernacular for nature, essentially, because there were the issues around great crested newts in Snarkhurst Wood, and there were the issues, impacts on reptiles and so on. So there was lots of clay there. That's why it was covered in ephemeral ponds, lots of rubble. I mean, if you're creating habitat for reptiles and amphibians and badgers and dormice and nesting birds in their hundreds that are up there now, you would pretty much leave it like this. All the tyres are generating quite a lot of heat as well. And then we've got the legacy of essentially fly tipping on it, because it was never legal dumping that took place over several decades over the last 20 odd years, which has added a really nasty complicating factor. This is on the Galt Clay on the spring line, where the water table basically comes down through the chalk, hits the spring line. You've got, as has been mentioned, you've got the Lilk stream there. You've got other tributaries and streams that run down and end up in the River Len. The idea of tampering with this to create low quality grazing to which will be subsidised, and I mean, there is no effective agricultural use for such a small outlier site, and the amount of perturbation to the ground that would need to take place in order to achieve no real gain. I'm slightly surprised, how this stacks up financially, and I think it's all linked to cleaning up the fly tipping issue. But so it is, as again the ward councillor has pointed out, it's this combination of environmental policy and planning has become very complex, and essentially all the planners are looking at is kind of land use and what it looks like. They're not looking at that legacy of contamination on a water table. And and I do share the concerns of mucking about with this effectively. I also feel that the ecological surveys do not go far enough. We've got an urgent update here, and it says, i.e., only the dormice, when actually I think probably I'd say reptiles and amphibians are what this site is significant for, if not birds. They are all covered by the Wildlife and Countryside Act, 1981. And we also know that the national landscape is supposed to be the effective epicentre of nature recovery. So we're looking at a potentially uniquely biodiverse site of open mosaic landscape, which we're going to turn into low-grade grass monoculture for no real agricultural gain, and it just does not stack up at any level. And if we are going to permit this, because our interest as a planning committee is only really that it's acceptable what it looks like effectively, we're going to need to toughen up the ecological references. We're going to need to talk about, it did talk about the reptiles and a destructive search with JCB buckets or something. Well, I tell you what, lift up any piece of debris on that site and it's got reptiles under it. It's a very, it's potentially one of the most biodiverse sites in this entire area. That's just talking about the nesting bird limit. We won't be able to go anywhere near it until August anyway, because of the nesting birds. But where is the reference to that in these papers? I think we're relying upon some very old ecological surveys that I suggest need to be looked at now. I was quite surprised that we don't seem to have any reference here from anything from Natural England that you would expect because of the complexity of this site. It's clear that Kent County Council Ecology have never been to the site or not seen it. I mean, it's just absolutely clear from the tone of what's written. And we deferred this for a critical reason, was because ecology was not addressed. Ecology still isn't addressed. We're still referring back to out-of-date information, which doesn't help us at all. If we're talking about a very significant engineering operation, for what reason I do not know, which we have no understanding of what the implications are of that. So it's embarrassing, really, that we've deferred this, and I don't know why we've deferred it, because we haven't moved on one step further. And I on all of the other points that the parish council and the ward councillor have raised, I really want to know from the Environment Agency and from experts what happens on Galt Clay if you start moving about tyre radials that are full of nickel and zinc and cadmium and heavy metals. It doesn't bear thinking about, because it's just going to end up going into the Lilk Stream, going into Majors Lake, going into the River Len, going into Moat Park Lake, going into the Medway, right near where they extract drinking water for the Medway towns. This is all a bit complicated.
And Councillor Harwood. I will ask Officer to come back on some of the questions that Councillor Thompson raised, if you're able to. Danny?
Yeah, we've added a condition, a further condition in terms of the urgent update, which requires various information to be submitted. That's on the 6A. And that also includes asking for details for the arrangement of the existing tyres on the site and other waste, and for evidence that those have been disposed of lawfully. I agree in terms of condition 4 that the wording of that condition is normally if you know that there's no harmful things on the site at the moment. So I agree that we kind of need evidence to be presented first of all before we go on to that wording. I think the point was made about normal use. How do you define normal use? I think that was put in there because I think all soil has some impurities in it. So it's how you kind of define soil which is kind of suitable for normal for I don't know, for growing vegetables in or whatever. I think you have to remind me what the points were.
I did send an email, the chair and yourself do have them, so you can see those there to refer to, and they're also posted on the portal as well. So I think that as Councillor Harwood has already pointed out, the complexities I think are too much for us to expect to deal with and put to bed in this meeting. The question is whether or not we think that the proposal that was made is sufficiently robust that we can propose delegated powers after the event, or whether or not, in fact, the complexities are too much, and that, for example, we might indeed defer the decision. I'm not suggesting that is what we should do, but if it turns out to be too complicated, then perhaps that is the option we should be looking at.
On the deferral, we've deferred this once. We can't defer it again. We have to make a decision on it, and this one will time out. So obviously that will then go probably to appeal. I would say maybe look at some of the conditions about how we can make it more robust while discussion is still going on. So if the two councillors want to have a bit of a confab about what conditions you probably want changed, and I'll just bring Mr. Jarman in.
Sorry, Chairman and councillors, I've misled you. It wasn't deferred last time around. I recommended that it was withdrawn because of insufficient information. My apologies.
Apologies. So I will take your Councillor Chavinsky, but I was going to say on that note then, seeing the amount that's been raised, and we've still got time to actually discuss this, I'm going to recommend deferral to give that. And I suggest that the ward councillor, Councillor Harwood, probably Councillor Springett, actually get together and actually address some of these issues. I will take Councillor Chavinsky. No?
Just raise one point down.
I was just going to say that's what the site looks like at the moment, is it? That's what the site looks. Yeah, not a pretty site, is it? And I can understand why the ward council would want something done about it. But from what you've been saying, I understand your concerns as well, and I think the right decision is to actually defer it and get some more information. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear there, we're deferring it on the issues that Councillor Thompson has raised already and emailed, and Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, it's on the contamination and the ecology issues, just to make sure that we have got this all appropriately covered. Because otherwise the implication of the land movement that is proposed and the change could negatively impact both the contamination issue and the ecology issue, and we need to ensure that appropriate safeguards are in place and dovetail with the parallel work that the Environment Agency are undertaking.
Okay, I think on that as well, we need to define the use. As you said, at the moment, this is quite an ecological site and habitat for vertebrates, birds, and so on. I think we need to classify actually what the land will be used for or return to.
Yeah. Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I don't want to be in the same position again. You know, this is a planning committee at the end of the day. So I think we also need to be cognizant of boundaries here. The Environment Agency have got statutory responsibilities for contamination, including obviously contamination of watercourses. So I don't think we should blur the two, because we're taking the responsibility from them. I think what we should be doing is, rather than stating no objection from the Environment Agency, actually saying why they don't have any objection, scrutinize what they're saying. But secondly, I just want to be clear, because ecology is obviously a bona fide and an important material planning consideration. But I just want to be clear myself, actually. In paragraph 6.40, it states the original ecological surveys were carried out between March and May 2023. In brackets, not including the Badger survey. And since then, the habitat within the site has had two growing seasons. Well, obviously, that's a matter of fact. But are there more contemporaneous surveys, ecological surveys, than in March and May 2023, given that that paragraph refers to those being the original? And logically, there's a second lot. Do we know? No. So are we looking for, if there's not a more contemporaneous survey, are we looking for a 2025 ecological survey? Yes. Is that what we have to get? Yeah.
Okay.
We are, and it's quite a narrow ecological survey. That's the problem. It was looking really at the ancient woodland edge and the impact on the ancient woodland, whereas I suggest it is the open mosaic habitat created by the inert material from CTRL being put in, which is what created the habitat, which is so important for birds, reptiles, and so on. So I think we need to turn this on its head a little bit and not just look at the fringe along the side of Snarkhurst, but actually look within the site. And then we can have an understanding of what, because if you read it now, it's talking about a destructive search and so on. I mean, it doesn't appear to make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
To address Mr. Jarman's question, 6.41, I think clearly states that the applicant has submitted additional ecological surveys, which doesn't date them, but it implies that they are post 2023, and we can't see that data.
I think the issue is, again, in line with what Councillor Harwood said, they're very narrow, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Harwood, but I believe this kind of classification of landscape now is actually defined landscape, actually, as in the type of landfill.
We just need to understand the implications of the application across the whole site, not just the buffer along the edge of the wood, which is what this needs to be. For example, there's no mention at all of the water bodies within the ecological survey, which seems strange, or of the scrub, or of the spoil areas.
So given where we are, Mr. Chairman, can I please be specific and invite officers and members' assistants on the matter of water, given that lives were lost in the adjacent road in the previous winter. Water Lane itself is even wetter, and given to significant icing in the winter, it is vital that, as I said, the absence of a map and engineering proposals for the control of water within this site are brought forward, and please can that be made specific?
I think we've got a list of what needs to be done. As I said, I'm going to recommend for referral that the ward councillor, Councillor Harwood and Councillor Springett work with the offices to address some of these issues and highlight them. Okay. Do you have a seconder for deferral? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All in favour? Okay, that's agreed for deferral. Unanimous. Okay. Moving on then. Item 14, Eden Barn, Love Lane, Headcorn, Kent. I call upon Kate Afty to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. So just before I introduce the application, I just want to verbally set out that I also recommend an amendment to condition 7 so that it also requires written evidence of the B&G offsite credits being purchased. So anyway, so moving on, this retrospective application is for the stationing of 3 static caravans and a day room on a site located to the east of Headcorn that is in the proximity of other gypsy sites. The application has been reported to the committee at the request of Councillor Round and Headcorn Parish Council. As the committee report sets out, the development is considered to be well contained and seen in the context of surrounding lawful development. The recommended conditions will further seek to screen and improve the overall appearance of the site, and it is considered that the development does not adversely impact the key characteristics of the low-wheeled landscape of local value. Please also note that the barn surrounded by the application site has extant permission to be converted into a dwelling, and with this would come some domestication of the area. A lot of the hard surfacing on the site was either permitted under the 2009 permission in connection with the barn, or it has been in place for more than 10 years and therefore likely to be immune from enforcement action. And the mobile home behind the barn also appears to have been on the site for at least 10 years and again likely immune from enforcement action. Local policy does allow for windfall gypsy accommodation in the countryside, provided certain criteria is met. And in accordance with this policy, the development is not considered to cause significant harm to the landscape and rural character of the area. Further to this, the council is unable to demonstrate an up-to-date 5-year supply of deliverable sites. The application is considered to be acceptable in all other planning respects, and the development, when considered on its own merits and cumulatively with other lawful gypsy sites in the vicinity, is acceptable. On this basis, a recommendation of approval is made, subject to the recommended conditions, the completion of the legal agreement as set out in the report, and the amendment to condition 7. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Round.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. The map is quite clear that we have on page 21. And let me iterate to you that there's a phenomenon in Headcorn in the Weald known as table water. And you can see lots of blue patches, which are basically what we call dew ponds. They're accumulations of natural attenuation or sud systems. This whole area fundamentally is one big bog. It is halfway, and I'm talking less than half a mile, to the north, the River Sherway, and to the south, the River Belt. The River Sherway is the spring-fed river that leads into the River Belt, which is a clay bed, table water fed river. As a result, this area is very high on table water, even in the summer. At the end of this particular site, where you see a junction, there's almost a permanent pond there. Some of it finds its way into the 2 ponds either side of it. Just to the south of the railway line, you can see some buildings in orange, supposedly. They're still in Headcorn, but technically the address is Ashford Borough Council. That is the Wildlife Lion Sanctuary. We're now going to ask our lions to have an increased table water area for the lions to live on. Well, they're only just coming to use and familiarity with the lion, with the grass that they've had, because they've only just been brought in from Ukraine. Meanwhile, whilst water is one of the biggest problems here, I can honestly say that you don't want to listen to Headcorn's moans about how many caravans we've got. We've got enough of them. Is this truly appropriate? Is this truly proportionate? Is this truly appropriate in these cumulative circumstances when we've got that many of them? And I dare to say we have a number of other problems with it. And whilst further down Love Lane, there are some actually lovely sites and some lovely people living in them, this is now becoming highly disproportionate and highly cumulative as an area. So therefore, I do go back to one particular point. What is the flood assessment for this development? What has been done and what will be done to mitigate the increase in water and the accumulation of water in the area? We already have flood problems on the Smarden Road, the road below. The Smarden Road is frequently a river. Love Lane is usually impassable for 6 months a year. It is inaccessible. Any development here will make water far, far worse. At the same point, I would also say that there is an undeniable right for gypsies and travellers to live somewhere, but I don't like putting them into Dickensian ghettos with water and floods. And I think people are entitled to somewhere decent to live in this day and age. I close at that point because I have many other points, and I hope other members realise it in the papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Round. Okay. We'll go to the ward member, the other ward member first, Councillor Drabinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sometimes I think I should record something and just play it back every time. Councillor Round says it all really, but also I trust everyone has read the parish council comments, which again are all very relevant. So rather than waste everyone's time, I would just like to point out that the amenities, it says on page 28, 7.13, it just says already existing lawful gypsy sites within close proximity to this site, and to now refuse this application in terms of location and access to basic amenity services would be unreasonable. Well, actually, your local amenities and services are almost non-existent for any kind of expansion at the moment. The school's full and the doctor's surgery is under pressure. I mean, you know, going to the annual general meeting of the parish council, Martin and I had to wear flak jackets almost because we get the blame for it as well. Although Martin went this year, I decided not to for one reason or another. The other thing is further down, it says 7.14, the last line, says this includes allowing development that does not result in significant harm to the landscape and rural character of the area, and this will now be assessed. Well, it does effectively then go on in 7.15, it says it does effectively infill land in between 10-acre farm and Eden Park Farm. Well, how can it not result in significant harm to the landscape when you've got these two areas and then you're going to fill in between? And what happens next? We're going to go over there and there. We're going to have an enormous area full of caravans. I think that is really all I want to say, other than the comments of the parish council and what Martin said. Really, please take on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question really to yourself and the officers. I can see that the applicant is Mr. Lee, and yet again we have another retrospective application from Mr. Lee. Now, I think Mr. Lee's applications have been before this committee on numerous occasions, that I would hope that he has been given the advice that actually it is better to come first with a proposal than it is to present us with a fait accompli. I've listened to what councillors have said, and I am concerned about the flooding, especially around the risk to health of people who are going to be living on the site. But that's not a planning issue. But my concern is we keep getting these retrospective applications in, and I would hope that Mr. Lee would work with the committee so that we can at least give some advice and have him work with us rather than present us with a fait accompli each time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleaver. I'm sure the officers will pass it on to the agent.
Yeah, the government advice for the last 15 years, I think, has been to have pre-application discussions, correspondence with the local planning authority before submitting the planning application.
Councillor Cleaver.
Yeah, just to come back on that then. So are we saying that Mr. Lee is consistently ignoring that advice in terms of engaging with us early doors rather than presenting us with a, it's happened, can I have permission? And I would say that whoever is putting retrospective in, because it does my head in, to be quite honest.
As you pointed out, Councillor Cleaver, the agent has submitted many applications and he probably knows the process very well. I cannot comment either way that he's choosing to ignore it or not ignore it. So, but people can make their decision. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. As we all know, retrospective applications are absolutely legal and you're allowed to do it. And there has been much lobbying of government at various iterations of the NPPF and other planning changes. And government has always just said, keep it as it is. So therefore, you know, we cannot, there is no formal objection that we can make. And I think actually, it talks about the policy void that we've got around gypsy and traveller sites, in that effectively applicants know that we are so adrift in terms of pitches and policy that they might as well put a retrospective in and kind of tie up the loose ends in the long run. Once we have the DPD in place, that's, I think, when we're going to need pre-apps, we're going to need all the detailed things. But until we got the policies there, we're going to be, you know, basically, you know, kind of open to this sort of treatment. However, coming back to this application, I think all of the points that the ward council has made are well made for anyone who knows Love Lane and this area. However, in planning terms, I think the key paragraphs are 103, where it states that the area is in flood zone 1. Therefore, if it were in flood zone 3 or whatever, we would have a leg to stand on, but we don't on flood zone 1. And then paragraph 202, which explains what the last refusal was on the site. And it was not on landscape, it was not on flooding, it was not on anything, it was on status. That is now resolved. So as a regulatory committee, effectively on this one, and there are others on the paper which are a bit different, I think that we need to follow the officer recommendation. However, the one thing that I do have some concerns about is the issue around the hedgerow, where we say we want that screening double staggered row hedgerow. We already a retrospective application. There's already a family living on the site. There's already vehicles on the site. We have got to be quite cute about ensuring that that condition is implemented. So therefore, I suggest we need an informative added to the landscape condition, that our landscape team work with the applicant and the residents on the site to actually ensure this is delivered and it is right. So we actually do get double stacked native hedge and we don't end up with a laurel hedge or a close boarded fence or whatever. So with that small tweak for the informative on there, and why not for Councillor Cleater, just add an informative that it is worth talking to the council at a pre-act level, because it saves trouble further on down the line. And I think if we do have those two informatives, then I think we can probably permit this one through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Howard. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. Do you want to talk now, or do you want to reserve your right, Councillor?
I don't wish to speak now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry to come in. That's not to change anything that's been discussed tonight on this application, but as the case officer clearly sets out in her report, the main negative with this is the lack of on-site biodiversity net gain. But as the case officer clearly points out in the balancing exercise, and as has been said tonight, in terms of satisfying a 5-year need, we're well below 1.2, well below. So that's a strong factor in permitting this. In terms of BNG, off-site BNG is provided. And thirdly, again, it's been set out in the officer report, is we don't find that there's significant harm to the countryside. And that's basically because it's of a certain height. And, you know, given the topography here, it's not going to stand out in the landscape because it's flat. Yes, I just wanted councillors to be cognizant of that. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yarmouth. Councillor Drabinski, and then I'll go to the vote.
Yeah, I suppose the original appeal, if you look at what it said there, I don't want to go through the whole thing, but he says, I consider features of site in its undeveloped form contribute towards those key characteristics of this distinctive rural low-wheeled landscape. And that was one of the reasons the first appeal didn't go through. And you'll see the other ones there at the bottom of 23. Right, the next appeal was different, and different people have different views on these things, obviously, and we can all have different views on these things as well. But one thing I would say is that we see these time and time again, and it is not acceptable. It really isn't acceptable. We cannot continually just nod them through. We have to draw a line somewhere. It's our duty as councillors, I think, to look after all of our residents, including the travelling community. The travelling community itself will suffer from more development in Headcorn. There are not enough amenities at the moment, and we've got another 110 houses coming in Moat Road at some point, and it's going to be even worse. We need to draw a line under these retrospective, and I understand, Councillor Harwood, that maybe if it does go further, that it may cost us. But unless we draw a line at some point, you know, it's just going to continue. That's mine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Trubinski. I appreciate your comments there. To go with it, however, we are a regulatory committee, and unfortunately, we have to judge the applications in front of us on that. Obviously, we hope the SPD is through soon, which will then answer some of these questions to go with and give us the legs to stand on to refuse a few more. Okay. On that note, Tony, your Councillor Harwood. All right, thank you. I'm going to move to the vote. All in favour? Those against? Okay, so that's 9-4, 2 against, as approved. Oh, abstentions, sorry. There are 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you, councillors. Moving on, there's another similar one. not sorry, to 45 Danny Headcorn, 45 High Street Headcorn, erection of a single story rear extension. I move to the officer to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for a single-storey rear extension to a Grade 2 listed building currently in retail use. The proposed extension is proposed to have a pitched roof and is a resubmission of a previous application which featured a flat roof extension, which was refused on heritage grounds. The pictures show the current limited space to the rear and the existing form of the rear elevation of the building. The proposed added footprint and introduction of a hipped roof is considered to cause less than substantial harm to a Grade 2 listed building through addition of excessive scale and height. The proposal adds to the scale of the previous refusal, failing to address the identified level of harm. Whilst growth of local businesses is a planning consideration within rural service centres, the site should be appropriately located and suited to the use. The development should also protect, conserve and enhance the historic environment. A business can reasonably be relocated to meet demand, but harm to a heritage asset is permanent and irreversible. In this case, public benefits of the proposed extension would not outweigh the less than substantial harm caused to the existing building. In conclusion, the officer recommendation is to refuse planning permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Round. I believe you're also talking on behalf of the parish, so you'll have 6 minutes, Councillor.
Yes, I'm probably speaking on for everybody in those circumstances, and a lot more people behind, including the vast majority of the staff that work there, as well as the owner. This shop has been in ownership of the same applicant for the last 17 years. I'm just about to become 70 years of age. I used that to get my sweets as a kid, that shop, so it's all pretty precious to me and the rest of the village. Now, I'm the first to support the conservation area of Headcorn. The listing of the High Street is an integral thing that I will fight for. And as soon as a neon sign goes up and a flashing light goes up in the front of that High Street, I will want enforcement to stamp down on it immediately. It's a precious high street. It's one of the most beautiful high streets in Kent, and I treasure it. But this is the back. Neighbouring shops have pipes, ventilation, larders. There's a butcher, there's a Chinese, there's an Indian. There's a variety of shops that have to trade and employ people. But at the back of them, quite frankly, it's a mess. Even worse, and I've spoken to the residents, they won't mind me saying this, but there was a spare plot of land right at the back of this. They've just built a brand new house there. Now, this is probably the gateway to this house. It's probably 4 foot from where this application or extension is intending to be. Now, it's going to be a fairly innocuous extension, in my opinion, and yet this man's business will survive or fall by it. The reality is margins are so thin in the retail industry these days, costs are so much higher that it's essential to make sure they have stock. At the moment, the person who owns and runs the shop visits wholesalers just about every day to stock up. Think how many miles he's traveling in order to do that in a vehicle every day. He also can't actually provide the best of facilities for his staff. So whilst this is, I understand the need to protect and conserve and protect listings, but this is an economic development business function that needs to survive and needs to survive in a village that depends on it 365 days a year. In my opinion, it's a modest extension of some 3 meters depth to form a desperately needed stockroom and an improvement toilet facility. The future viability of this store is dependent on its stock directly opposite Sainsbury's Run, and Sainsbury's have a lot more resources. This is a small and medium enterprise. It's a family-run business with staff who walk to the shop. We need to defend our shops. We need to defend the economic development of our area. If this shop didn't close, then we'd probably finish up with another Barber's. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, agree with everything Martin says. If you go to look at the back of those shops, it's a mess. And this will be an improvement. But more importantly, if you look at Headcorn High Street now, we've got 1, 2, 3 charity shops, I think. Nothing wrong with charity shops, but they're there because other shops have closed down. And this is a case where economically, I mean, the guy doesn't want to spend money on a store at the back because he wants to spend money on a store and make it look good. No, he wants it because he needs it. He needs it for his business. And it is very important that we support our local traders economically, because if not, everyone will be getting their groceries delivered from everywhere and their products delivered, and these smaller businesses will go out of business. Simple as that. And we should be supporting this type of application, and it will have absolutely no effect on the characteristics of Headcorn High Street at all. You won't be able to see it. And it will improve, it will definitely improve the look at the back of the shops. I would fully support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Can I just ask the officer, give you a satellite view of the area to highlight what the Councillor Trubinsky and Councillor Rand have just said about the other developments?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Can you bring up a Google Maps or a satellite map of the area so that the can you just quickly go online and bring? Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to support the ward members on this. As a neighbouring village at Staplers, we are rural service centres. This type of local shop, local amenity is what makes these villages rural service centres. This kind of business requires storage areas and for the business to continue. If we continue to lose businesses, and Headcorn and Staplehurst and I believe Marden are losing businesses on a regular basis, so I feel we should support this. As has already been mentioned, it's quite a nominal extension and it's tidying up an area which isn't particularly beautiful. Thank you very much.
Sir Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Normally, I'll always be the first person to support protection of heritage areas. You know, we're here on this planet for however long we've got, sort of like, you know, three scores or 4 scores, whatever it is. But those buildings will be there for, you know, 1,000 years. However, with this high street, actually the heritage, I think, is the frontage. I don't think anybody gives, you know, sort of like I was going to say a pig's burp, I'm going to say it, about what goes on at the back. But also there's strong precedent here with the other buildings that have already been extended. So I just find it peculiar we're sitting here talking about this when the parish council and the 2 ward members have strongly supported it. I think we should just move to a vote. I would propose we accept it.
Yeah, I've got to probably have a second, but obviously we do need to actually put some reasons why we've gone against the officer's recommendation, and we need to actually get some conditions, I believe, actually together.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment, but I wouldn't go against the officer recommendation based on you want to be pro the businesses. I would just say that, you know, it's got to be on the planning merits. So presumably that's rear addition is obviously not the original listed building. And you know, it's a bit awkward for me, but I would say that you do consider that the proposed extensions are modest and in keeping with the original listed building. I presume that you'd want to see conditions covering matching materials, perhaps sample materials, and details of fenestration.
Yeah, and obviously to give you delegation to do those.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, I know one of the ones we were lobbied on, the applicant's agent actually provided pictures of the rear of the buildings. And for me, the applicants, and looking at the drawings that we have seen, mean that actually their application is in keeping what's already existing at the back of the shops. I totally take on board what you're saying about materials, etc. We can put those specifications in, but I'm looking at the pictures. I've forwarded the email to Sam, and actually some of them look a right dog's dinner, to be quite honest. So I would say that the modest proposals being put forward are actually in keeping and will be no higher than, I think it's picture 4 or 5, which is similar to what's being proposed with a small pitched roof. And I'm one who's actually passionate about listed buildings. I don't think we list enough buildings, but actually in this case, I don't think that what the person is proposing is not in keeping with what's visible at the rear of all the other shops. So either we've missed a trick on every other application that's been brought before us, or we can be seen to be penalising this applicant. But I would, on that basis, I think we should accept the application with the recommendations you've made about materials, etc. And I will leave you to put it into a nicer frame of words than I, and not use the word dog's dinner about the other rear to the shops.
Are you able to put that into some wording, Sam, for us?
Ben, sorry.
Put that into some wording for us so that we can actually vote on that, so that we don't consider the material. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. So we're just going to say it doesn't cause harm to the listed building, and we, yeah.
Due to the scale of what is proposed and the fact that it's on a recent addition to the listed building, in conclusion, we do not consider it causes harm to the listed building. Thanks.
Okay, so is the proposer and the seconder happy to take that word in that Mr. Jarman has just proposed with the, sorry, Councillor Harwood?
Very quickly, I am very aware that we've only just agreed the updated conservation area document for Headcorn, so this is not an auspicious start for it, is it? However, we are talking about a brand new addition to a new extension. So therefore, we need to be very careful, one, about materials, but also about things like the integrity of this extension in terms of its environmental performance. And because it is commercial, I just wanted to ask Mr. Jarman whether the BREEAM standard applies.
I think it does, because it's an extension rather than a new building.
Right, because I'm aware that we've got a residential extensions SVD, which does require certain hoops to be jumped through, but because this is commercial, I just want to ensure that this is as energy efficient as it can be. So will it presumably just be building regs?
Yeah, definitely building regs, and I think it would need an energy performance certificate as well. I'm pretty sure it would. You know, with a rating, obviously.
Yeah, but because they are not strictly within us as a planning committee remit, that we still don't want them to be kind of missed. So is it worth putting on, giving delegated powers to put an appropriate informative or whatever upon what the environmental performance of this extension will need to be?
By way of informative, yeah, by informative, we could say something like we'd expect a minimum rating of C.
Yeah, the proposer. Yeah, so we're going to vote for approval of the application. Okay, on the wording that Mr. Jarman's provided and delegated powers to do the material considerations and finalise the wording of the conditions and the including the informatives that you've just requested, Councillor Harwood. Okay, that clear? Okay, right. All in favour? As against? Against. That's approved. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Land rear, Four Oaks, Churchill, Bolton on Chelsea. I'll move to the officer to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for 4 gypsy and chowder pitches, comprising 4 mobile homes and 1 touring caravan with additional hard standing and a fence. In terms of the site location, the site is to the south of Heath Road, which runs across the middle of this image, and also Bolton-on-Chelsea Primary School, which is fairly close, also to the north. The site is on land between Church Hill and the east, and an area of woodland which is protected by TPO. To the south, there's other gypsy travel accommodation to the south, and also a holiday let site. This is the site entrance in Church Hill. The visible caravan you can see was allowed on appeal, with details in the planning history on page 57 of the agenda. The second caravan, not visible on the left-hand side, was also allowed on appeal. The current application is accessed to the left of the caravan that you can see at the rear of this site. This is the proposed site layout. The current the current caravans allowed on appeal at the front of the site. The current application to 4 caravans are at the rear with a touring caravan. The TPO area is at the back of the site with a 15-metre distance between the nearest caravan and the nearest tree. Although the site is not highly sustainable in terms of its location, it's not so far removed from basic services and public transport to justify refusal. And as mentioned, Bolton-on-Chelsea Primary School is about 40 metres to the north. In terms of potential impact on character and appearance, the site is screened from the rear by the protected trees and from other directions by existing caravans. Planning conditions are recommended to include a requirement that matters such as landscaping and ecology enhancement are provided. Condition 8 is, as the application is retrospective, condition 8 is drafted in a manner that means that a planning permission would fall away if the applicant does not meet the requirements of that condition. Whilst the application does not provide 20% biodiversity net gain, which is a policy requirement, in terms of the overall balance and the lack of 5-year land supply, officers feel that the proposal is still acceptable. Officer recommendations to grant permission subject to planning conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have a statement to be read that's going to be read out from Bolton Monchelsea Parish. If you just bear with us.
Thank you, Chairman. Tom, myself here. So this is a statement from Bolton Monchelsea Parish Council, which is unable to be represented here this evening. The Parish Council wish to see this application refused. Our original objections to the application were as follows. The proposal is an intrusion into the open countryside. The proposal would result in unacceptable intensification of gypsy and traveller pitches on the site. The area is currently grazing land, therefore the proposal represents a change of use. Since the application was submitted, there have been 2 other planning applications submitted for the same overall gypsy and traveller site location on Church Hill. The first of these applications, the reference is 24504358, was refused by Maidstone Borough Council and is now awaiting appeal decision. The second application, reference 25/500-571, remains undecided. A summary of the Parish Council's objections to these 2 subsequent applications is as follows, and these objections also apply to the application before you this evening. The proposals are contrary to policies in the Maidstone Borough Council local plan, in particular policy SP17. When considered with existing adjacent sites, the proposals represent significant overdevelopment. The applications include change of use of land from greenfield sites. Government policy states that new gypsy and traveller development in the open countryside should be strictly limited. Freedom of information details provided to the Parish Council from an NBC caravan count on the 25th of January 2024 show 2 mobile homes at Cognut Tree Place, 1 mobile home at Green Acre, 1 mobile home at Fairway, and 6 mobile homes at 4 Oaks. The permitted number of mobile homes at each of these sites is 1 at Cognut Tree Place, 1 at Green Acres, 2 at Fairway, and 3 at 4 Oaks. In total, then, there are 10 mobile homes on these sites with only 7 permitted. If planning applications 24503377, 24504358, and 25500571 were all approved, then there will be 21 mobile homes in total on the Churchill sites. This represents a completely unacceptable intensification from the 7 mobile homes that currently have planning permission. The proposals are contrary to Bolton Monchelsea Neighbourhood Plan Policy RH1, and that development south of Heath Road will not be supported unless it conforms with national and local rural exception policies. In summary, an increase of 14 mobile homes from 7 to 21 is a completely unacceptable intensification of development on the Church Hill sites, and the application before you tonight should be refused.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, looking at the site, I've just wanted to raise 2 concerns here in regards to, firstly, the spacing on the site. It looks like it's a very narrow, very tight area that we're dealing with here. I mean, I appreciate that there's a lot of land. It's going back across the site. We're not dealing with a very wide site here. Based on the satellite images we can see on, Google alone, it looks like these are very tightly cramped in. I'd be very concerned about the fact that we're developing sites that are so tightly packed together, with an issue of overcrowding here, considering that we don't have a lot of space to work with. And secondly, it also looks like the site is actually spilling over into that back area that's not lined out in red between the trees and the edge of the border of this site. I'm just wondering if there's actually been any site visit to confirm that that space is actually clear, or, you know, because by all means, if we're just dealing with this site here, particularly in the red border, I'm just actually concerned that there looks like there's development outside of that border, sort of negating the fact that we're dealing, you know, that it says that we're working outside of that 15-meter boundary. The site itself looks like it's actually spreading into that area. So I'd just like to ask if we'd actually make sure that that border between the trees and the existing red line there is actually cleared and, you know, made so that it complies with that boundary.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. I was actually going to raise the same issue, that 15-metre that we're saying will be clear. Looking from the satellite imagery, there is stuff there, and looking also at the satellite imagery, it looks like there may be an environmental issue because there's a bunch of trees that have died, possibly because of something going on. So I'm just wondering, that 15 metres, is that actually clear, Mr. Ryan, or is it going to be, is that another application to come to this committee?
Yeah, there is a building in that area between this application site and the trees, but that is not part of this application. I think the 15-metre distance is between the trunk of the tree. So in terms of the canopy, the distance will be shorter. You mentioned in terms of the actual caravans. I was there this morning, and 3 of the caravans are there. The 4th one was there, but it has water damage, so that's been removed. They said that as part of the recent caravan count, they had checked the separation distances between the caravans, and it met. There's a requirement of 6-metre separation, and they said it met that distance in terms of that layout.
So, Mr. Ryan, just on I know it's not inside the red line boundary, but it clearly looks like there's a building adjacent one of the buildings, which would actually put that 6-metre thing. It wouldn't be correct, would it?
In terms of the adjacent site, yeah.
Well, it's not the adjacent. It's the bit of land behind it that haven't put in for planning application, isn't it? So there is a building there that's within 6 metres. I think that's the issue that councillors raised.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the red line, that building is outside the application site. Yes, the separation between if there's a building in that location between the application site and the TPO trees, yes, that would be less than 6 metres. Yes.
So does that building have planning permission?
I'm not aware it does.
Okay.
The only thing I'm
Councillor Cox.
So I've just been sort of like zoning out and Googling the site a bit more. Obviously, we're very much zoomed in here. So just to the north, we've got Brethren's Meeting Place, which is a place of worship. About half a mile to the south, you've got St. Peter's Church, which Grade 2 listed, but it's been in existence since at least 1700s. Slightly to the north, we've got a primary school. Slightly to the south here, before you get the church, you've actually got a proper sort of holiday site where people come, and it's highly rated. I just don't know if this is the place for more expansion with these extra caravans. You know, I think we're zoomed in. I think we need to zoom out and see what else is in the area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jarman has recommended that we defer this as well to get account of the building behind. So on that, do we want to continue? Is there any items or anything we want to highlight for the officers to take away before I actually recommend the deferral? Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Okay, all in favour of deferral? Okay, that's deferred and unanimous.
So the reasons for deferral are to work out what's going on between the wood within the buffer zone. That looks like a relatively modern building. You know, why and how is it there? And are we also looking at the the site density and the amenity issues coming out from that? Because we heard that the fire certification, which is what the 6 meters are, but that's not making it a great place to live. I mean,
so I did in the recommendation that will come through the next one. We have actually voted on that, so that's. Yeah, that'll be addressed in the report. So. Okay. We can have a personal break. Okay. Councillors, 10 minutes. So 1:45 if we come back. Yeah. Okay. I'll see you all back here at 1:45. Okay, councillors, if you make us start again. So, councillors, item 20 is a starred item. Does anyone wish to speak on this? Or have it been introduced?
Sorry, Chair, I'm not keen on the change to condition in the urgent update, so I'd request that it's heard.
Okay. So in that case, move to Mr. Cowdy to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a retrospective application for the conversion of an agricultural field to a dog walking / exercising use. The proposal includes fencing, hard standing and parking space for a single car. The proposal is a departure from the council's local plan. The proposal is not considered to have significant harm upon the character and appearance of the countryside, and changes in character and appearance will largely be resulting from the change in intensity and pattern of the use of the land and the associated paraphernalia. But this is deemed to be able to be dealt with by way of condition. The urgent update was that the use of the site would be between 7 AM, 9 PM, where within daylight hours. As it was deemed that residential properties were at significant distance from the site. With regards to the use, users will deal with their own ways. The site will operate via a booking system with hour-long slots and half-hour changeover periods. And further details of the operation of the site can be secured post-permission by way of a site development scheme and a management plan. The proposal isn't deemed to have any significant impact on other material planning considerations, and overall the proposal was considered acceptable, and the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission.
Thank you. We have Miss Sargent for the applicant. Okay, not Miss Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. By way of introduction, my name is Matthew Porter, the agent and planning consultant for the application. We've decided that I'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant today. The applicant is the owner of a small independent dog walking business based in Bolton and Chelsea. The dog field itself is a simple setup with no permanent apparatus and uses an area of the field on a leasehold basis from the landowner. It's distant from residential properties in the area to avoid disturbance. And the field is used by a number of local professional dog walkers, trainers and members of the public as well, who seek a safe, secure and peaceful environment to walk and train their dogs. Some of them can be reactive in public, so this is a space for dogs to be working in that area. There are no such similar facilities within the south of Maidstone, and the dog field is valued by clients and their dogs who may not be permitted or may not feel comfortable walking and practicing recall in a public park or on unrestricted country lanes in the area. And again, it's for dogs that perhaps could be difficult in public, so it's a secure place for them. The facility is fully insured to meet DEFRA requirements, particularly in terms of like dangerous dogs. It's all compliant with the British dog field requirements as well for a dog exercise site, and it's secured by way of a 6-foot post and stock mesh fence, which has very limited visual impact and is scarcely visible from outside the site and when the field is not in use. Again, there's nothing permanent or fixed on the site itself. The site is only used by one party each time. Most bring 2 or 3 dogs and perhaps a friend. She does not permit larger groups, and there's only space for one vehicle to park just off the road. The site operates in daylight hours only, dependent on the weather conditions, and does not require any artificial lighting, nor is not connected to mains power either. Booking is managed by her using a booking system of 1-hour slots with a 30-minute changeover period between bookings. The client's contact details are taken in case of emergency, and they currently remove all waste prior to leaving the facility. The bins are intended to be provided by the entrance should permission be granted tonight. In summary, the field provides a valuable and unique facility in this area and supports a number of professional dog walkers, trainers who rely on this facility to support their own businesses. And I'll politely urge members to support the recommendation of your officer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dan Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I actually, my issue isn't with the application itself. I'd say I agree with 90% of what the agent said. It's modest, well-managed rural use, minimal visual and environmental impact, and I like the idea of the one-in, one-out booking system. My concern was with the urgent update, so it's a change to condition 8. Obviously, the applicant wants to take advantage of longer daylight hours in the summer, which is understandable. But even in daylight, at those times, activity can be disruptive to wildlife. Early morning and evening are particularly sensitive for wildlife, especially during spring and summer. So to give some examples, skylarks are ground nesting, sensitive to disturbance early in the morning. Bats, hedgehogs, possibly owls as well, are more active at dawn and dusk, even if technically it's still sort of light out. I think the original hours on the original condition offer a fair balance. They allow for reasonable use while respecting the setting, minimising the impact on wildlife and neighbouring amenity. So unless a sort of stronger ecological or operational reason can be provided, I would prefer to maintain condition 8 in its original form, or if some sort of compromise could be found with the applicant and meet them halfway.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I'm quite happy to support that. Just to go back to the visual hours, I don't think it needs a huge, a huge debate. I think the problem is if you could start saying summertime you can go to such and such, and it's an enforceable issue, then becomes more of an issue. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that on exactly that sentiment. If the main users are professional dog walkers, they're not going to be walking after 5 o'clock. They're going to be back home with their families. Yet at 6 o'clock, I think it's already giving that sort of cushion hour. So I think the original hours seem sensible to me.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. This is quite a large area that's going to be fenced off, and it is a kind of natural corridor. Therefore, I suggest that the fencing condition, we need to ensure that there is some preservation of ecological networks. And I know that in the condition on ecological enhancements, it gives a kind of a list, and it's saying kind of hedgehog highways and so on. But I think it's actually specific to the fencing. If we've got wire mesh that animals, i.e. dogs, can't get out of, which it's going to make the site quite hermetically sealed. So I think we need to specifically, when we talk about the fencing, ensure that there are hedgehog highways, for want of a better word, just something to allow the wildlife to continue to move through that linear site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. So you recommending hedgehog gate? There has to be some form of actual wording for us to go with that, isn't there? Hedgehog gates and badger gates.
It's just a hedgehog gap or whatever. Yes, that we need it, on either side, so the animals can move through. It would just be up at the hedge ends, because essentially it's a linear field with a thick hedgerow at either end. But if we fence it off completely, we're just blocking it.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Wilkinson's made some good points, as Councillor Harwood has, and that's I'd be quite comfortable supporting it with those changes, but I'd quite like to point out to planning officers that in case that a further request comes in for a non-material change to conditions, I believe those changes are material, and would want it not to be passed as a non-material change, because I had my fingers burnt a couple of weeks back on that. So I just wanted to make that point, that this feels like a material thing that I think certainly sways my decision on the application.
And Councillor Jeffries, just want to let with Councillor Harwood that to condition 6, you want to add hedgehog, the gapping in fences for hedgehogs, yeah? Okay. You happy to take the amendment? Good with it? Yeah. Okay, so the proposer and seconder? I'm the seconder. No. Okay, I'm going to move to the vote with the changes agreed to condition 6 and reverting back to the original condition, condition 8. Yeah. Okay, all in favour? Twelve four. Those against? Those abstaining? No abstention. Okay, that's approved with the conditions. Okay, moving on. So item 21 is also a starred item. Does it? Okay. Councillor Cox, wish to see this introduced.
It's my ward, okay?
Okay.
I get a
That's
say.
okay, that's fine. Mr. Dimms, if you'd be the honest to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this introduction relates to both the Woodcut Farm applications because they're essentially for the same proposals, which is to remove the requirement to safeguard 10,000 square metres of office floor space. However, separate decisions will need to be made on each application. So the first application relates to the outline permission for the original site, which is outlined in red here. And the yellow area to the east is the vacant plot that's yet to be developed and where the applicant is seeking flexibility in uses there. Second application relates to an extension of the site by the access point, and again the yellow area is yet to be developed. So just some of the summary of the main issues. Both permissions have conditions and legal agreements which safeguard the provision of 10,000 square metres of office floor space, and that's because the employment allocation that was saved from the previous local plan requires this to be safeguarded until April 2026. The reason for that is that the evidence base for the previous local plan identified a need for around 40,000 square metres of office floor space. The Woodcut Farm site was the largest new allocation in that plan and so was required to contribute a large proportion of this. Under the new local plan review, the council decided to save that policy because the new evidence base continued to identify a similar need for offices, but without any changes to that policy. So despite the new plan running for an extended period until 2038, the safeguarding date of next April wasn't extended. So in a year's time, the applicant can provide other uses in those areas, but they've decided to apply now to remove the restriction. And I think that's to continue developing the site because it's sort of ongoing. The applicants also confirmed there's been no interest in standalone office buildings despite marketing since 2020. So whilst the proposals are contrary to the local plan review, in view of there only being a year until other uses can be provided, and the likelihood of some offices coming forward in that time are extremely unlikely, we're recommending permission to lift those safeguarding restrictions to allow flexibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Timms. Mr. Booth, the applicant, who will be speaking on both applications, item 21 and 22.
Good evening, members, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Dan Booth, a town planner at Savills, speaking on behalf of Maidstone Holdings Limited, the applicant. I'm here to speak in relation to agenda items 21 and 22, which both concern land at Locate, Woodcut Farm, which is recognised as the borough's premier commercial park and has been a resounding commercial and local economic development success story. These applications primarily seek to remove safeguarding conditions that currently reserve land for office or R&D space on the 3 remaining plots at Woodcut Farm. These conditions stem from policy EMP1(4) of the local plan, which temporarily safeguards 10,000 square metres of these uses until April 2026, just 12 months from now. Since acquiring the site in 2020, the applicant has made substantial investment to provide a high-quality, modern employment park, attracting a strong mix of occupiers, supporting local jobs, and establishing Locate as a key location for business in the borough. We have engaged proactively with local members since the early days of the scheme, many of whom will be familiar with the location and fantastic businesses on site. Despite active and sustained marketing for a number of years, there has been no credible interest in delivering standalone office or R&D space. In contrast, demand for industrial and district floor space remains consistently high, as evidenced by the other plots on the site having been taken up quickly by local businesses. Since COVID-19 and significant working cultural changes in the office market, it would not be viable for the applicant to bring forward office uses on the site where there is no realistic prospect of these being occupied and the risk of an empty office block without tenants. Continuing to safeguard land for large office risks delaying more local jobs, investment and development that meets real evidence need for space. The safeguarding is acting as a barrier to delivery. These applications will facilitate further development at Woodcut Farm, enabling the remaining plots to come forward for high quality and sustainable employment uses without any further delay, in line with the proven market demand. This approach also aligns with national policy in the revised NPPF framework, which encourages local authorities to plan positively and flexibly in responding to changing economic circumstances and gives significant weight to applications that drive economic growth. This is about unlocking opportunity and continuing the momentum already established at Locate. We are grateful for the hard work of officers in managing the applications and recommending both for approval, and wish to thank the members who have been engaged long-term in the development of Locate. We respectfully request that members approve the applications this evening. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Cox as a ward member.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm not sure if we can, or if not, if we should be looking to amend the local plan. I just feels, you know, in the year I've been here, I've been told it's enshrined, so suddenly we're thinking it's not enshrined. I don't get it. The second one is we've talked a lot tonight about commerciality not being our business, and the basis of this application is commerciality. My next point is, while the site, it is what it is, I'm not a fan. You know, I walked Councillor Travinsky up to the top of the North Downs, which he didn't thank me for. Oh, no, we did. We had a great time. But actually, I remember when you got there, Councillor Travinsky, one of your first comments was, "What's that?" And it's like, well, that's Locate. And it is visible and you can see it. So it's not all apple pie, as I said. You know, the road outside it gets flooded. In fact, we've had complaints as a ward member and also to KCC from Genco, who are the promoters and the managing agent, about the flooding that actually happens right outside their office building, which is right opposite the entrance to Locate. The Section 106 land that was to be allocated before occupation of the first building, and that was 5 years ago, is still not complete. And I've queried actually this week with the solicitors on that, what on earth's going on, and you know, they're just doing this, so it's him. But I think we really need to apply some pressure to get that complete. It was one of the material conditions. The site that's being looked at for putting offices, and I get the commercial rationale for that. The offices instead, in putting the warehouse buildings instead of offices. The reason they were offices is because they were lower in height. These are colossal buildings and they're going to be very visible. And I think if we wave it through, just on a, oh yes, it's fine, let's go and build it for the rest of it, I think we'll have missed something really fundamental here. And I think we need to use, my last point, I think we need to use a little bit of time. We've got a year. There's no need to rush this decision. We need to use, and I propose the next 3 months, just to do a proper re-engagement with the Locate and Genco, just to go around. 40% of this site only was allowed to be used for development. The other 60% was to be used for sort of like landscaping, trees, whatever you want to call it, hedgerow farms, etc. We need to just go and check what the progress is of that as well, and just see how many of those commitments have been honoured. So that would be my proposal, is that we don't rush into it. We go and see what the lie of the land is, check the flood risk, check what's happening on site, check the height of those buildings, and then have a proper think about it rather than just waving it through. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take Councillor Cleater first, if that's okay. Councillor Cleater?
Thank you, Chair. Although we do have a finger in this pie, because isn't the applicant Maidstone Holdings Limited, which is a company that we hold as Maidstone Borough Council? Maidstone Investment Holding Limited. We sure, because we've just checked Company's House. We just need to check that, please.
Company called Maidstone Holdings.
Yeah.
Councillor Cleater, I can confirm that that's not.
It's not, right, okay, thank you. Just wanted to check that. One of the points I wanted to look at, which for once, National Highways have made a comment. I know, I near fell over myself when I heard that, and I think it's really important that there is no high intensity parcel delivery services operating on the site. So every Yodel, other parcel delivery services are available. And obviously, I think that would lead to a big increase in traffic, although it is in very close proximity to the M20. But obviously, when Brock's on, they'll be going up the A20 and through Bearsted and causing mayhem, no doubt, and the other way to Ashford. But I understand why, but we do have around this area, whether it's in our area or Tunbridge and Malling, a plethora of warehousing going on, which doesn't provide the sort of employment opportunities, shall we say, that we would like. And I do take on board what you've said about the landscaping and the mitigation around that. And I think that it would be useful to see what's been put in place so far, because when I've gone round there doesn't seem to be much.
So, councillors, can I just bring us back to the actual application at hand? It's not about landscaping, not about what's been done. It's about, the item 21 is about going away from what's in the local plan, and that's what we're discussing. We're not discussing flooding. Unfortunately, Councillor Cox, it's not about this. It's about the departure from the local plan. I think Mr. Jarman wanted to come in as well. Right.
Yeah, I do agree with Councillor Cox's sentiment, but going back to the 2017 local plan, the inspector extended the examination time by 1 day, in fact, to be precise, half a day. And it was purely because he was unconvinced that, given Maidstone's need for, I think it was 17,900 houses, that was obviously going to increase the population of Maidstone. And he thought, like a good planning inspector, that a lot of the employment should be local. We couldn't run the argument that everybody was going to work in the City of London. Hence, there were quite substantial office allocations, because offices, in relation to Councillor Cleater's point, has a higher employment density. However, and this goes back to the crux of my point, and as Richard points out in his report, we're now in a landscape whereby we've halved. I can think of one site right in the centre of Maidstone, whereby the office space was halved. In this particular case, as the chairman's pointed out, what is before us is a local plan site which has not been reviewed. As the applicant's agent has pointed out, this times out in less than a year, to be precise, the 1st of April 2026. This council had the opportunity of extending it ad infinitum, I don't know, 2036, whatever, but it chose not to. As simple as that. So that's the whole point of a local plan review, is reviewing your policies, and we haven't.
Just also to come in, so I will be in Councillor Harwood. Obviously, as I pointed out, I worked on that site. I've never been restricted by flooding getting to that site outside the Genco office at all. I'd also say I went on the tour that the Woodcut, the Locate put on. I think a few of us did, and inside the warehouse buildings, most people now have just converted the warehouse space into office space. Because why would you have one building and then have another building as such? So I'm just saying that's what's happened on the site. I can understand the rationale to go with it. I'd also say, if looking at it from an office space, there's no amenities. We say about amenities. There's no shops. There's nothing around there. So when we talk about movements, traffic movements, if you want to keep the office stuff, you're going to have much more movements than you're going to have even with a parcel delivery kind of place to go with it. But I've been, sorry, Councillor, we bring back in. Councillor Harwood's been waiting patiently there.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome Mr. Jarman's intervention, because this is about the utility of this site and ensuring that it is fit for 2025, not 2017. People have noticed we now have office blocks full of families, and the pandemic kind of was the final nail in the coffin, I think, of the old kind of office as we understood them. I too want employment to be local. I don't want people to get in their vans and go to South East London every day and clog the streets up. And we allowed development on this site after a very long process, a lot of discussion around the visual impact, around the environmental mitigation, and the other issue. I would say that the elements of this site which are currently Class E and even Class B8 are of very high quality, and they are providing important local employment genuinely for local people. And I don't want us to sit here kind of trying to, roll back time. Frankly, we either have a modern use class or we don't have them used. And I would far rather that we had this site operating at full bore and providing the jobs and the economic boost we require. That yes, there are other issues that can be looked at around conditions, delivery and so on, but not attached to use classes. So therefore, I would like to actually move that we do give the legal agreement delegated powers to approve the changes as per the papers in front of us. I think we need to do them one at a time, even though it's presented. Yeah, so it's just the outline at this stage. I'd move that we vote. Thank you.
Do you have a second for that? Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Councillor Cox, do you reserve your right, Councillor Spooner, to talk, or do you want to talk now?
I just want to say that everybody can be wiser after the event. In 2017, it was a completely different set of planning policies, completely different set of economic prospects for the country. Since then, we've had COVID. Since then, we've seen no end of office blocks in Maidstone converted into flats. We know that Eclipse Park and the Kent Medical Centre just cannot attract office uses. So the office market is dead. And his point is trying to flog a dead horse, basically. And I think we have to give in to the inevitable. Me lad, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a few points that have been made. First of all, the flooding does happen. I get the emails about it icing over and vehicles hitting the building. That's why they've put those concrete barriers there to stop that happening. It does happen. Number two, jobs. I absolutely am all for employment, but the number of employment opportunities that are created by this site are in the tens. I think I had some marketing materials from the colleagues of the guys here, and it's not that many. And also, being a Hollingborner, I look probably once a month to see what jobs are being advertised on the site, and it's not many. The jobs are not going to local people. We're not eliminating people travelling to work, they're just travelling from a different place. I do take exception to the comment about turning back time. That's not what this is about. This is about actually a forward-looking piece of let's change it from X to Y. We've got the right at all times, I believe, to actually sort of look at those proposals and to make a decision on those. So I repeat what I said earlier, for these to be waved through to become units that are of the same sort of dimension, and particularly the height of the existing ones, I think is a dereliction of our duty. I think we need to look at them properly. And I think we do need to look to make sure that the occupier is actually fulfilling all of its obligations under the current scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I'm just going to bring Mr. Timmins back in. He's just got a point to make about the heights.
Yeah, on the heights, and it's in the paper. So we're talking about the outline, which is the slide here. So the vacant plot, the policy allows for buildings up to 12 metres in height. So that's the limit. Obviously, a warehouse or building that are there are different from an office building, but the heights are allowed to 12 metres. I know we're not specifically talking about it on the other application. The area that has outline permission for an office is 3 stories. So I suspect they would come in with a building that's similar to the one behind it, and that would be the same height as we've actually approved. So the heights aren't any more. Well, if we approve this, we're not approving new or higher heights, if you like. Thank you.
Okay. Answer some of your questions, Councillor Cox.
Does it answer all of my questions? It doesn't answer whether the one that I raised first off, whether or not we should be changing what's in the local plan. But I'm willing to. But I know, well, yeah. So I would propose that we didn't, because I think it sets a precedent.
Okay. I've got a proposer, got a seconder, so actually going to go to the vote. So the proposing amendment, Councillor Cox. Debbie just asked, are you proposing an amendment to the motion that's been? Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, all those in favour? This is okay. Just make clear, this is the outline. We've got to take another vote on the hybrid. Okay, so we're voting for the outline permission. Okay, as per the papers. All in favour? That's 9-4. Those against? 2 against. Abstaining? 2 abstain. That is approved. Okay. We now move on to the hybrid. Shall I open the floor back up to discussion? If people want to discuss it any more, this is more detail in this one. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask officers for their view on whether the point made about the connection to the sewage system by Thurnham Parish Council has bearing on the decision that we're being asked to make in regard of this item, please?
No.
Thank you.
Any more questions on it? Okay, I don't see a proposer, so I'm going to propose from the chair. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Okay. Right, all those in favour? That's 9-4. Those against? 2 against. Those abstaining? 2 abstaining. Approved. Okay. Next item, item 19, plot 3, Peacock Farm, Chart Hill. I'll move to the officer to introduce, please. Okay. Well, sorry, just a three starred items and just kind of getting into the habit now of actually just introducing them. Does anyone wish to talk on this? No? Okay. I'll move from the chair as a starred item then. Second. Yeah. So, if we can start. Yeah? Yes, because no one wants to speak on it. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to propose from the chair as a starred item to have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Harwood. All those in favour? That's 9-4. Those against? Those abstaining? No. Can we take that vote again? Because there's not enough people actually voting there. So all for it. Okay, 10-4. Those against? Those abstaining? Okay, approved. The actual next one we can do identical. So if no one wants to see it introduced, I propose from the chair as starred item. Thank you, Tony. Okay, those in favour? Eleven 4. Those against? Those abstaining? 2 abstaining. Okay, item 13 is approved. Unfortunately, that's where it stops. We have to now ask a few of you to vacate. And then shall move to Sean to introduce. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Chair. So this item is for a prior approval application for a solar system which includes solar panels to be placed on the roof of the council depot building in Birchholt Road. So here's the depot. And then here are the arrangement of the solar panels on the roof. So I've assessed the proposal against the relevant criteria of the General Permitted Development Order, so the prior approval criteria, and considered the impact of its design and considered its impact in regards to its design and glare impact. And I find that the prior approval, and I therefore don't consider there to be any significant glare impact or negative design impact either. And therefore the prior approval is found to be not required. So I'll hand over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions? No, I'm going to propose as per the papers. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. All in favour? Unanimous. Okay, so that's approved. Okay, moving on to Heather House. Okay, another one for you, Sean.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So this is a non-material amendment to the Heather House development, which was approved in June 2023. So it comprises one site, residential, and the other four, a new community centre, which is this plot in the south. So the new community centre, the NMA is the reason for it is because the architectural team have looked at the fire safety element of the scheme, and a new door is required to the front of the building. So it's essentially, so this is as approved at the top here, and what's required is this new door to the front, and that allows fire crews to directly access the building in case of emergency, and complies better with the building regulations as well. So that is the change before you, and I have recommended approval on the basis that it's a non-material amendment.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak? No, Councillor Wilkinson.
I'm overjoyed to be able to announce that I'm satisfied that it's both non-material and necessary. So I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendation as per the order paper.
See, Councillor Trubinski seconded that. Do you wish to talk on the item, or do you reserve your right? Okay. All right, in that case, I'll move to the vote straight away. All in favour? Again, unanimous. Okay, so that is approved. Okay. No. Okay, we then move on to the appeals list. So there was something actually me and Councillor Harwood did want to propose about introducing within planning a checklist, which actually we do need to vote on if you're happy for us to do it. Basically, it's before stuff comes to the planning committee that there's a little checklist that the planning department will go through to make sure they've actually gone through all the processes like bird boxes and all that kind of stuff, which we normally sometimes miss, and that kind of stuff. So we're proposing that that checklist is incorporated into anything that before it comes to planning. Okay, any questions on that? Is that I'm going to propose, but we need to actually send it to him. So, one second that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. All in favour? Okay, unanimous. Okay, we then move on to the appeals. All two of them.
Yeah, all two of them are a bit of a double take. Yeah, on the big appeal, Headcorn one. As officers, we didn't contest that. As is common with public inquiries, the appellant did a U-turn on the listed building. One of the sort of main reasons for refusal was that they were proposing demolition of the listed building because, in their opinion, it wasn't of any worth. But in the proof of evidence, which we received not that long before the actual commencement of the public inquiry, they did a U-turn and said that they were keeping it and they were going to do it up in straightforward English. And also, we the new NPPF came out as well in December of last year.
Okay, any questions on the appeals? Councillor Thompson.
So, Rob, I'm sorry to push you to another sentence, but well, I'm not really sorry. So you're saying that it was worth us going through the process, and although it says that the appeal was allowed, we have actually achieved a worthwhile outcome by going through that process?
We can't, obviously there's other people involved in public inquiries, such as, you know, residents. I think, no, it wasn't the parish council, because that was through Maidstone Borough Council. Inspectors can't just, not like a football match, they can't just call off the appeal. You still have to attend, because the inspector still has to go through all the issues, because he or she could say, well, actually, I still want to consider this issue. Have I answered your question?
I was going to say that they also have changed the density of the layout as well. So the Grade 2 listed building to the west, is it? They've moved the density further to the east and actually changed the layout slightly, didn't they, as well, to go with it? So it was an improved scheme to what was initially applied for.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right, Chairman. To go into detail, you know, we could have carried on and contested all of the reasons for refusal, or just some of the reasons for refusal. But then, particularly at public inquiry, there is a risk of an award of costs against this council. And like I said, I do think that, you know, the main reasons for the U-turn, if you like, were due to the U-turn by the appellants on the listed building. And, you know, there are some fundamental changes again in the NPPF. You know, it's been quite a long night, but I would say that the previous NPPF was very much about numbers of residential properties. It's my own personal opinion, but I think the last one is even more so. Yeah, my view is that the planning inspectorate would outline applications, because that's the game developers always play. At public inquiry, they will say, oh, don't pay much attention to our plans, they're only illustrative. If they get permission, they become set in stone. That's my own personal opinion. But inspectors go along with that and just say, oh, this can be conditioned, or leave that to the reserved matters. So, yeah.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? No, in that case, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you, councillors.